So, welcome to the pre-match press conference of the Team USA. Before we start, please check your mobile phones that they are switched off on silent mode. If you have a question, so please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. But before we take the question, I want to ask the head coach, Jill Ellis, and also the players, Kristen Press and Megan Klingberg, to talk about the match tomorrow against Sweden.
Yeah, we're really excited for the second game. We've had a good few days of preparation. Know we have a formidable opponent to play, and I think it'll be a terrific match. And obviously, this is a tough group and a big game for us.
And for me, I would say we're, of course, really excited to play against Sweden. They're going to be a great team. And, in the World Cup, we expect that. We expect to play against the best. And we've been preparing for a long time for these matches. And every game that we get under our belt, we are trying to grow. And we're really looking forward to having the opportunity to play again.
As you know, Kristen and I played in Sweden for a few years, and it's a really special place to me. I really love Sweden. I love the league. I love my team, and I love the players that I played with. So we know them really well. They're incredible friends. They're incredible people. So I think it adds a little bit of an extra edge to the game because it kind of gives like a little sense of bragging rights. So we're really excited about it. We know they're going to be a good opponent, and we know it's going to be fun.
So the first question, please. We begin with the woman. Okay.
For Kristen first and then Megan, does playing Sweden in a World Cup game have special meaning to you guys since you both spent meaningful years of your life in the country? And I know, Kristen, where you rekindled your love for the game.
I think in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. In one hand, Sweden is also very special to me, and I owe a lot to the country for being here in this moment. I think that it really helped my career, and it helped me grow as a human being as well. But this is the World Cup, and I think that trumps everything. And it's another game in the World Cup. It's an important game in our bracket, and that's where all of my focus is.
Absolutely, I second that with Kristen. It's fun playing against your friends, and it's fun seeing, your teammates again. But we want to win. We're here to win, and we want to win the World Cup. And this is another game on the way to doing that. And so that's what our focus is on. And we're going to do our best to get the 3 points and make sure we're getting out of our bracket on top.
Hi, Jill. Of course, the first objective in a World Cup group is to survive and advance. But there are big differences between finishing first and second in terms of the travel that you have, the rest between games, and potentially the difficulty of the opponent. Does that sort of reinforce the importance of this game in particular?
I mean, yeah, I think it does. I mean, to go into your third game with hopefully with 6 points, certainly gives you different opportunities, maybe different perspective on what you need to do in that third group game. So in terms of, rest and all those types of things. But, I think, again, and sort of to echo what Kristen said, I think the important thing for us is to get better in every game. So this again, the game against Sweden is another chance for us to try and improve and continue to grow in this tournament and play our better games as we start to hopefully get to the knockout rounds.
Hi, Jill. You said after the first game you had concerns about the performance in the first half in particular. So what have you needed to focus on in particular since then?
Well, I think a little bit was just, it's a first game of a World Cup. And so I think, for me, I honestly, and I kind of said this, that the first half of these games is, it's going to be up and back. You've got two very athletic teams in that first game that both wanted to kind of put the throttle down and go. So I think, for me, a little bit the takeaways were, these certain players that haven't played in a major world event and started in a major world event, they've kind of checked that box and got hopefully that out of the way. And then I think it's just trying to reinforce the good, positive takeaways from that game. I thought we grew in the game. I thought we got better as the game went on. I think we started to settle down a little bit in terms of how we wanted to play. And we scored 3 goals in opening game, which is very good. And then obviously try and minimize the things that we didn't feel went quite our way.
I have a question for Jill and for Kristen. Jill, can you explain why Kristen didn't get called up to the national team earlier? And Kristen, can you tell us how you felt after you scored the other night, and what spending time in Sweden, how that helped you get here today?
I think Kristen was, and her and I have had this conversation, but Kristen was on the cusp of pushing into that. I think for a lot of these younger players, because we have so much depth and seniority and experience, for a young player, often at times, the piece they're missing is that experience of playing in those big moments. And it's kind of that catch-22, right? You need the experience, but you don't get that unless you get in. So I think it's, her decision to go and play in Sweden, continue to refine, and that's kind of what I said to her. I was like, you've got all the pieces, now you're just missing the opportunity, but just be ready when the door is open for you. And she took that and went away, worked at her craft, and I know she was an alternate in the Olympics and did very, very well and was impressive, in the trainings. So I think, it was just a matter of time. But again, you got to know how heavy we are in the attacking personnel in this country, that sometimes for a young forward, it is a little bit more of a slower climb sometimes to get in nowadays.
And first, my reaction to the goal, I guess, was a combination of relief and elation, and that comes with how I felt about the whole game. Obviously, stepping out through the tunnel, I was so excited, I was nervous, and all the energy that, you kind of keep at bay as you're preparing gets to finally just rush through your body, and you get to really fully experience that. And but the more times that I play in big games and the more experiences I have like that, I think it gives me a little bit of perspective. And I could have been a lot more nervous, and I could have been a lot more ecstatic after the goal, but I think that this has become a job, and I really understand that and love it about it. And what was your second question?
What you learned in Sweden, how it got you here?
Well, my lessons in Sweden are hard for me to talk about because there's so many, of course. Just in any 3-year period of your life, you would have a lot. The things that I look back to the most was playing without the freedom and without the pressure of constantly looking at the national team and how I could get here. When I left for Sweden, I kind of left that behind in order to develop in other ways, and it allowed me to play with joy, and I think that's the most important thing at the end. And then second to that would be just playing under coaches that really worked with me individually on the nuances of being a dangerous forward.
This is for Jill and for Megan. Jill, this job was not exactly unknown to you with all the time that you spent at the national team, but how much pressure do you come into knowing that the expectations for the U.S. are basically a final or bust? And Megan, what's that like as a player that in this country no one knows anything besides a lot of success?
I mean, I think it's about the environment you're reared in. You kind of get used to that. I mean, it's probably no different than a child being in the environment and the expectations. So for me, having been around this program, for a long, long time, it doesn't matter whether you're playing a closed door, whether you're playing a friendly, whether you're playing an inner squad. The expectation in every single training, every single moment, is to compete and to win. So I think when you know that, there's nothing hidden about that. And I think, for me going into this job, certainly I knew that. So I think, if you don't know that and you're not expected to understand that that's the position you're put in, then you shouldn't apply, really. So for me, it was kind of being in this culture, being around these players, knowing the expectation of U.S. soccer and the great history and tradition that this program has. There weren't any surprises. So in terms of dealing with it, I think once you go in and you know what you're getting into, you deal with it, and you push through it and you embrace it, because there's really no other choice. It's kind of what you're used to.
These are absolutely the type of environments that I love to put myself in. When I was in high school, I chose to go to UNC and play for Anson Dorrance, who is arguably one of the toughest coaches to play for because of his competitive cauldron and sort of the culture that he creates there. And then I chose to go to Europe and play on a team with Marta and Sager and Vera Boqueta and all these different players that were incredible in their own right, and playing for a Champions League title. So these are the types of environments that I love and that I think that I thrive in. So being on this team has been a really incredible experience because it's been a place where I've been able to grow and get better as a player and learn from the experience of the older players about how to handle that pressure. So whenever I do get into these situations, I'm better prepared to handle it.
Jill, how do you prepare for an opponent whose coach knows so much about your personnel? Is it a matter of you know what's coming and you execute it, or do you make changes to adjust for the fact that there's such a familiarity?
I've said this a few times. I mean, we have a lot of different personnel from 2012. But I think for me, the approach is we got to play to our strengths. We got to focus on what we can do, what we're good at. So it's not really taking into consideration who is on the opposing bench. It really is about getting our players prepared in a good mindset, believing in what they're doing, believing in the game plan. I'm putting all the emphasis into that because, we can't control their decisions or what they do. It's really about what we do and how prepared we are to react.
These questions are for Kristen and Megan. At the last game, it seemed as though 75% of the crowd was cheering for the United States. Did it feel like you were playing at a home game, and what kind of impact does that have on your play?
Are you sure it was 75? It felt like more. Yeah, I think you're being nice. It was incredible. We absolutely love our fans. We've been walking around the city, and you can just see people in red, white, and blue, and you can just feel the energy in the city, and we absolutely love it. It's been incredible. But if they could just keep it down just a little bit when I'm trying to tell Pino instructions, that would be great, and then, bring it back up afterwards.
We're really grateful to be here and to be supported by our entire country and the people that traveled up here. It really does mean the world to us. Like I said, walking out of the tunnel and seeing all the fans, and I felt like I could have been in California in my home city because their support is overwhelming, and I think every game that I get to wear the crest, I feel so much pride.
Yes, question for Megan. Yesterday, Caroline Seger was asked if she had been in contact with anyone of the American players. She said no, but she said she received one SMS from you, which she hadn't opened. What did you write?
Oh, just a little smack. No, I'm just joking. I just asked if she would like to trade jerseys after the game. Aww. And she said yes. Oh, still friends.
Yours might not fit, though. Just kidding.
Jill over here.
Sorry.
There we go. There's a lot of talk about Pia, but obviously you've got a Swede on your staff, Tony Gustafsson. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what insights he's been able to provide. And Megan, I was wondering if you could talk about what it was like playing for Tony while you were over in Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, Tony's great. I mean, I got to work with Tony with Pia in 2012. We had great chemistry. He's a great coach. He's very experienced. We used to sit around for hours talking about the game. I just really enjoyed him and his energy and what he can bring. So, when I got this position, it was one of the first calls I made. In terms of Sweden, obviously he knows some of these players. But we've really focused again on ourselves and how we can best take opportunities to maybe exploit things that we're given, but really focus on the things that we can push in this game. But yeah, I mean, he's great. He's done a lot with the set pieces for us as well. His level of detail is tremendous, and it gives us another sense of confidence. I think our staff is phenomenal. I think we have great energy and great chemistry, all of us.
There's probably been 3 big growth periods in my growth as a soccer player. And one was when I went to college. The second was when I was called up to the U.S. women's national team. And the third was when I went to Sweden. And that's mainly in part because of Tony. He's really an incredible coach, and the way that he sees the game is kind of like a chess master. He sees the big picture, and he's really good about moving pieces and moving parts and making sure those parts work well together to win the game. And I've never had a coach that's been able to do that before. So it was a huge growth and learning experience being able to play under him and see the way that his mind works to make these pieces flow together and work together for the betterment of the team so we can be the best that we can possibly be. And that was a really incredible experience for me to be able to be a part of because, like I said, I've never seen somebody look at the game that way before, and that's really unique to Tony, the way that he's able to take all these pieces and fit them together to make the best team that he possibly can.
non-soccer question for Kristen and Megan. You talked about fancy foods. Could you guys please describe your best meal together in Sweden?
Kristen.
I'm leaving that for you.
Oh, I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is we would make homemade hummus. And it's not necessarily like, it's not really so American or so Swedish, but it's just something that we did in the House of Happiness, which, by the way, is the place that we call it our house. We would just make it homemade, and I think we had some of the best times just making that and sharing, and eating it and sharing it with our friends. So yeah, it's funny how food really brings you together.
You guys are like a Saturday Night Live skit. Brilliant. I love it.
For Jill and Kristen and Megan, want to go for everybody here. World rankings aside, I think the popular perception is that the United States is the dominant power in the world of women's soccer, and that you guys are the team to beat. Do you feel that you're the team to beat in this tournament?
I think if we play to what we're capable of playing, I do. I think there's some tremendous teams in here, and I think the game is evolving daily. I really think it's been, even watching some of the teams now that are here for the first time, I think it's just a tremendous level. It's a privilege to be a part of this game because I think it's just an amazing sport for women. But I think we have a lot of strengths, a lot of depths that make us a contender.
One thing that I love and have learned being on this team is how to embrace that pressure and that expectation that the world puts on us and that we put on ourselves. In times in my career in the past, I had shied away from that, and I just wanted to be focused on having fun and being my best. But coming into this team, I was around a group of girls that thrived in that pressure, and they kind of showed me how you can turn something that's negative into something that's so positive. So when we step on the field, I think that we believe we're the best in the world, and that we have the expectation for us to win this tournament, and anything short will be a failure for us. And no one's shy to say that, and I think that that's a really cool thing.
The really interesting thing about this team is that when you look at our first game, we know it was a subpar performance. And to me, that just means we have so much room to grow and so much room to be better, and we can put in better performances. And as long as we're creating quality chances, and we do create quite a few quality chances per game, we're going to be in every single game that we play.
Question for all three of you. A lot of kids are watching, and they want to grow up to be on the stage. Do any of you or all of you have any thoughts on when the right age is to start soccer and when the right age is to specialize? Because I know that's been a debate among parents.
Well, I'm sure these guys can talk to their own personal experience. I mean, the guiding principle for me is the love of the game. Whether they enjoy it. I mean, that has to be it. I mean, I've got a 10-year-old that doesn't want to look at a soccer ball right now, and I'm okay with that. But it's, I think for any kid, I think it's finding their own path. It's finding what they enjoy. It's, so whether they're doing 3 or 4 sports, or if one happens to have their attention right now, I think again, it's a parent has to guide them and not push them and let them find their own way. If you don't enjoy something, then you won't put your heart into it, and you'll probably gravitate towards something else. So I think that's kind of a guiding principle.
Every single player on our team has a different path that took them to this moment. So I don't think that there's a formula. This age start, this age specialize. It's definitely something that I think should come from within, a girl or a boy. What they want to do, how they want to spend their time, with the guidance of their parents. But if that's their dream, I think they'll find the way.
I totally agree with Kristen. To me, what I always tell youth players when I'm talking to them at camps, in clinics, in schools, whatever, is to reach your personal excellence. Because if you can become your personal best in soccer, whether that's at the rec level or college level or U.S. Women's National Team, whatever, then I think that is an incredible thing that you've done, because you have reached your personal excellence and you've pushed yourself to the best that you can possibly be. So if everybody could just find what their passion is and push themselves to that personal excellence, then I think that's fine.
question for Kristen and Megan. This has been brandished the group of death. Francisca Ortega this morning branded it the group of survival. Just wondered how you guys are enjoying being part of the group that probably has the most attention out of all of them, and on the separate side, how you try and separate yourself from that attention away from the field to make sure that you can stay focused and really focus on the next game.
Well, I think the title, the group of death, that comes from the outside again, and I don't really spend that much time thinking about it. It's, the focus was on the first game, and now the focus is on Sweden, and whether or not that's the group of death or the easiest group in there, it doesn't matter. We have one job to do, and we're here to do it.
Aside from sitting here with the media right now, this is about as much interaction I've had with you guys. I try and stay away from everything. We really have just been focusing on one game at a time, and I've said this before, as long as we win each game as they come, then eventually we can be World Cup champions. So we're focusing on each game as it comes. Right now it's Sweden, and we're discussing what they're good at and how we can beat them. And next it'll be against Nigeria, and hopefully after that we'll keep going one game at a time. And that's the way that we're looking at it.
Yeah, Jill, right here. What did you learn from Pia during her tenure with the national team program?
I think patience was one of the things I took away from her. I think as American coaches, we're kind of, and at times Pia would just sit back and let them play, and whether it was an activity and maybe the activity was going belly up, but she just would sort of persist and hang in there with it, and I would have probably changed the drill about 10 minutes ago because I'd be so frustrated. So I think, just learning a little bit of patience, I think was something I took away from her. And just her outlook was really good, really positive. Just always the glass was half full, and I'm kind of wired that way too, so I think that's why we were a good match. But I think just her management of players and just some of the things and perspectives that she had.
Jill, we all thought, we all knew that this was going to be a tough group. How do you assess it now, having seen the two games up against what we've seen elsewhere in the tournament?
Oh, I think it's a very, very challenging group. I said this from when the draw happened, that I think physically this is an incredibly demanding group. You've got pace in every team. You've got athleticism. You've got teams that are great in transition. So I think those are, especially for the women's game, transition is a big part of our game now, and you've got 4 teams that are really, really good at it.
Jill, can you tell us about what you think about the way Sweden performed against Nigeria? But because we're from Sweden, we think they performed pretty poorly.
And I think Nigeria is a tough game to open with. Going into that game, you don't have a whole lot of information on Nigeria. It's hard to sort of prepare because there's not a lot of footage out there, and in terms of probably their schedule, they don't play a whole lot of games that you can look at. So I think it was a very challenging first round game. I think a little bit, as a coach sitting on a 2-0 lead, I think that's tough. That's tough to swallow when you kind of sit 2-0 and then you end up tying 3-3. But I'm certain that they took a lot of things out of that game. So in terms of what they see as their personal performance, that's their call. But I think for me, it was, I think it was a very tough group, tough game for them.
Next question, please.
For Megan, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you were preparing for this game and studying Sweden and what they do well. What is it that you consider the greatest strengths of that team?
Well, excuse me, I know a lot of these players personally, and they're incredibly smart players. So we have to be prepared for a team that's tactically very aware and knows what their strengths are and will play to those strengths. And I think a lot of times what they do is they're going to try and pull us out of shape and get in behind our back line. And, they're tough and they're strong, and we need to be prepared for all of these things going into the match.
Okay. Last 2 questions.
Kristen, I was wondering when in your soccer career did you start feeling the pressure that you had to be perfect and you had to score in every game, and how that changed, when you went to Sweden and when you came here came to the national team to sort of deal with that pressure in a different way?
That's a good question. I don't think I could pinpoint a moment, but I definitely think it was at its worst in college, because I could score in every game. So if I didn't, it was a huge, huge letdown for me personally. And I don't think it necessarily ever went away either. I think the way I deal with it changed, but I still have pretty high expectation on myself to execute. Playing for this team, playing for my professional team in Chicago, I think that you win games by executing, and that's something that I can contribute to a team, and I want to do it when the opportunity arises.
So, and the last question, in the first row.
I just want to follow up on that. Did you feel like the timeline was okay? Were you comfortable with how soon you got onto the national team?
I think that when I wasn't on the national team, I always wanted to be on the national team, but I think that's fair to say from any player. If you're dreaming to be here, you're kind of waiting for your opportunity to come, and you're trying to prepare as best as you possibly can for when it does. And I think I took kind of a scenic route to get here, going all the way to Sweden, playing a few years as a professional before I got here. But now when I look back on it, I'm so grateful. If I had been on the team earlier, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to play abroad for 3 years, and maybe I wouldn't have been as prepared when my opportunity did arise.
So thank you very much to Jill Ellis, Kristen Press, and Megan Klingberg, and good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you.